What's up, gamers? Aaron Shack here with the Shackcast episode 35. We are going to be talking about all the latest summer movie releases, as well as some of the latest tech and gaming news that's on the docket here. Before we get into some of the blockbuster releases we've had over this year, I want to talk a little bit about Man of Steel's controversial ending that leads into The Flash, because if you have seen The Flash, you know that General Zod is back. And the interesting thing is that apparently a lot of people had a problem with the ending of Man of Steel. I actually think, without turning this into a Man of Steel podcast, which I would love to do, I think that actually the no-kill rule has a reason, and this movie becomes that reason. It's like, why does Superman not kill? Why does Batman not kill? Well, there's got to be a reason. It's not just like, well, he doesn't kill because that's what it's always been, that's what we say. It's like, no, it makes more sense if there is a morality, a true reason, an event, or something that happened. He had to eradicate the last bits of his people, the last bits of his history, any chance at recreating Krypton or having any sort of relationship with his people. He had to choose between humanity and Krypton, and he chose humanity. He chose the thing that was stranger to him. But, you know, he was raised by humans. He grew up in that culture, and that brings it on. Now, what makes it so interesting is that I didn't really touch on this when I talked about The Flash, and that's why I want to talk about it today, is that, you know, when The Flash creates this flashpoint and they go time traveling, and it's sort of this alternate reality where Zod comes in, and this time he kills Superman as a baby, and then he just kind of moves on. And then his victory is inevitable, because there are some points in time it's just meant to happen. It's not something that can be averted or whatever. Superman was the one thing that could have stopped Zod, and without Superman in the equation, even as great as the Flash is, he's unable to stop him. Even with Michael Keaton's Batman, unable to stop them. Anyone else that exists in this, you know, particular multiverse, it's very different from the animated version, so it's like there's really no one else to stop him but the two Flashes and Batman. I mean, that's really all we got. And so I think that ties those two movies together really well, is that it really was always going to come down to Zod has to die. And there's no two ways around it. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way, because we are going to talk a little bit more about what's happening with DC Comics and their latest foray into the movie universe. So they're calling it the DCU. What's happening is really kind of crazy. Apparently, James Gunn has met with Gal Gadot, and they had talked about a potential Wonder Woman 3, and, you know, Gal was saying that she was sure that her position was safe and that they were going to work with her. She said she loves portraying Wonder Woman. It's close to my heart. James and Peter said that we'll develop a movie together. She had said all this in a press release. And I was trying to grab the exact quote, and that they were going to work together, and that that project would be safe, and that even though they were, you know, looking at a different Wonder Woman in the Paradise Lost, I believe is what it was called, that they were going to sort of go back and talk about Themyscira before Wonder Woman. You know, they're obviously, if they're casting a new Superman, that means they're probably going to have a Batman and a Wonder Woman that's, you know, age appropriate and, you know, all of that stuff. And, you know, James Gunn has his own vision. And so now we're actually hearing that none of this is true. James Gunn did admit that he met with Gal Gadot, but he is not saying that there was some sort of guarantee or anything about a Wonder Woman 3 or anything about her continuing to be in the role. So it's a really weird spot, and it looks like she's getting screwed over in the same way Henry Cavill was, and probably, to a lesser extent, maybe in the same way that The Rock was screwed over. Dwayne Johnson was screwed over when playing Shazam. So, I mean, it's really tragic, but it also didn't make a lot of sense. Like, why would you get rid of literally the Superman of our generation, Henry Cavill, someone that embodies the role? It's on the same level as getting rid of someone like Christopher Reeve. It would not have made sense at all. And so now we kind of have this question with Gal, and it wouldn't make sense to keep her and not Ben Affleck and not Henry Cavill. So I don't even know what to make of this news. I'm really just relaying it. I'm more befuddled and angered and, in a strange state of confusion after just kind of seeing some of this news roll out over the past week or so. The next thing I want to talk about on the docket is that Marvel VFX workers, visual effects workers, are explaining why unionizing is necessary to save the industry. And they say here that if you make the job so difficult and so unsustainable, what do you expect us to do? We want to save this job, so we're going to unionize. We're helping ourselves. Some of the quotes here is that they were literally being asked to work strenuous, long hours in short periods of time in order to turn around Marvel projects and have all the VFX done in just a ridiculous amount of time, not being able to see their families, not being fairly compensated, and stuff like that. So, I mean, that usually leads to people burning out and some of the VFX in certain films being unfinished or like little shortcuts having to be taken, and that's why we certainly have some movies, over the past couple of months and years where it just feels like the industry is relying so heavily on VFX, and it's like nobody can get all of this done within the amount of time that they are allotted. It's unfair to assume so in some ways. So once again, it looks like the VFX union folks will be unionizing, as well as the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild out there protesting. And so it looks like the VFX workers are going to have to fight for it as well. So I do have links to all these articles that we've talked about in the description down below. Let's see. One last bit of superhero news before we transfer over. In the comics world, Superman #6 is going to kick off a whole new story arc, which will feature the first appearance of a new Superman villain called the Chain. I'm excited. I don't know. I haven't really kept up with a lot of Rebirth stuff. I haven't really enjoyed it as much. I just kind of fell off on reading certain modern comics in that way, because I really wasn't enjoying Jonathan Kent being the new Superman. I really like Clark Kent, and a lot of it's centered around the super family and the super kids, and it's just stuff I don't really. None of that interests me in any way, so it sort of pulls me out of it, and I end up not wanting to read stuff like that. But I will look into this Superman #6 that's coming out soon. The next thing that I have is there is a RetroFighters StrikerDC wireless game Dreamcast controller. I can't even say it. It's so many words. This is being made by RetroFighters. It's called the StrikerDC wireless Dreamcast controller. Now, if you know me, I'm a big fan of the SEGA Dreamcast, and this is a modern controller that you can play your Dreamcast with, and I assume you can probably also just hook it up to your PC and other 2.4 gigahertz compatible devices here. But what it says here is that it is, as the original Dreamcast controller did, is using no drift Hall effect joystick sensors. So once again, like the Goalie Kit King Kong Pro 2, much like the 8-bit Do Ultimate Bluetooth Pro wireless controller, these are using Hall effects, and they're intending to get rid of that stick drift problem. They are not going to use potentiometers that degrade over time. Other features it has are wireless rumble, 2.4 gigahertz tech for low latency input. It is compatible with the VMU, which is the virtual memory unit, which is essentially the memory cards. It comes with a dongle that you can plug in the VMU. You can still play the little games on the VMU or whatever if you have one. Authentic retro gaming with next-gen modern, modern conveniences, I would say, are in this wireless controller. Because you have a 30-foot wireless range, you have a turbo button, it's USB-C rechargeable, it's comfortable, it's ergonomic, it has updatable firmware, it's got 10 plus hours battery life, and works with the original Sega Dreamcast, which is, pretty much the biggest concern anyone would have, is like, well, what happens if my old controllers finally give up? It can be really hard and really expensive to purchase new ones that work with the original hardware. And so seeing a company like RetroFighters coming in and making literally a controller to come in and save the day and allow us to continue playing our Sega Dreamcast even as hardware, inevitably wears out on us. It currently has 2 different color sets, which are white and then kind of a transparent blue, which actually is really cool because I owned both types of those controllers and I still have them and they look great, and I don't know, I may have to find a way to get 2 of these and review them on the channel, so stay tuned for that. Next thing we have is the Red Dead Redemption port. Is coming to the PlayStation 4, will be backwards compatible on PlayStation 5, and is also coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now, why is this necessary? Why does this have to happen? Well, Red Dead Redemption came out on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. So the problem we have here is that PlayStation 3 games cannot be played on PS4 or PS5. So Red Dead has been left on a console that is old and dated, and I still have mine, so don't worry. But it's needing to be ported so that people on modern consoles can play it. It's coming to the Nintendo Switch as well, which I think is really dope. I think that's interesting. But it is not getting any visual enhancements, no modern changes. This is not a remaster. This is not a remake. It's simply just the exact game that we played back then, brought into the future and potentially giving people the opportunity to play the game for the first time. But what's interesting is that what Xbox has done, and the reason why there is no Xbox version, is because if you had an Xbox and you buy it on 360, you already own it. You have the disc. You can put the disc in the console, or if you own a digital copy, you can just boot it right up on your Xbox One, your Xbox Series X or S, your Xbox One X, whatever Xbox you've had for the past just about almost 10 years here. Coming up on 10 years for the Xbox One. So the interesting thing is that Xbox has done backwards compatibility in the right way, and that's why I think this is a really important story for us to discuss. There are cross-generation cloud saves, there's auto HDR has been implemented, FPS boost, resolution upscaling, instant load times. These are things that are not part of the original game, and this has happened with a lot of the backwards compatible titles. We've been playing through a lot of the old Gears of War games on the channel, and all of those have had some sort of these various things, whether it's resolution upscaling or FPS boost or having the cloud save come right over and be able to pick up exactly where you left off. So yeah, you don't need to buy the game again, which I think makes Xbox the winner in this situation. You don't have to, go onto eBay or Facebook Marketplace or third-party, digital stores or brick-and-mortar stores or anything like that. Xbox is the home of game preservation, and it's making gaming easy and accessible, whether you want to play old games like Doom, the first major FPS made by ID Software, or if you want to play Starfield, the latest one. You can play any of this on your TV, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your desktop, any device that has a browser on it, any device that has access to the Xbox app. The new Samsung TVs are coming out with that as well. All of these options don't even require a console, but of course, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Series X and S are perfect opportunities and platforms where you don't have to pony up, that's right, the $50 to buy the game yet again. So people like PlayStation have you ponying up the $50 once again, even though you bought that game on PS3 and you'd like to have it again. You have to pony up the cash for it. Xbox realizes that there is some value in allowing your consumer to have that property and be able to carry it forward and not do the Nintendo thing where it's like, let's sell you Super Mario Brothers 1985 every single time we make a new console, or as with what Sony's doing here and selling you Red Dead once again. So it's not entirely the platform holders' fault, but it is certainly a thing that, had they been future-proofing themselves by actually doing backwards compatibility right, they would not be in this place. Another interesting tidbit, I'm really just going to hit the headline on this one, but the Witcher producer says that Geralt is like Batman, Superman, and James Bond, thus saying that the role is recastable. I have to strongly disagree. I think The Witcher is very much, the book's out there, the games are out there, and the TV show is now out there. It's certainly a recognizable brand, but we've never had to recast the role because this is literally the first iteration of it in pop culture, in terms of a video. And so I think this guy's just really trying to justify the fact that Henry Cavill's out and that they're going to have, one of the Hemsworth brothers come in now and play the role of Geralt. And I just don't think it's going to be quite as good. So that's where we are on that. Couple last notes that we have here before we get in and talk about some movies here is that I'm going to show you, if you're watching the YouTube video, I have updated the merch store here. I've worked together with Spring, and you can see this on the YouTube channel in the description down below. We've got a little merchandise tab, but I'm just going to briefly scroll through some stuff on screen. I have done several collections here of merchandise that you can purchase on the channel. I have an entire workout set with, men's and women's shorts, leggings, duffel bags, tank tops, sweaters. I've made a fitness journal here to keep track of your goals. I have a yoga mat, sweater. We've got a pickleball paddle set. Got various types of hoodies, fanny packs, water bottles, sweatpants. And then once again, in honor of Presley the Beagle, I've had pillows and shorts and a dog feeding mat made, various clothing apparel, even a little doggy journal that you can use to keep up with your dog's life, their tricks, all that kind of stuff, write all sorts of memories down. I even made a pet t-shirt with Presley involved here. I've done the tote bag, a puzzle, coffee mugs, and then of course there's the Shackitude collection, which is kind of about me a little bit, my favorite video game characters and heroes. I have featured, we've done pillows, welcome mats, flip-flops, a Nintendo Switch case, a pint glass, die-cut stickers, a notebook, tote bag, a desk mat, various sweaters, yoga mats, puzzles, accessory and fanny packs, a coffee mug, and then same with the Aaron's Love emote. I've kind of wanted to really just spread the message of love, and that's what this collection's about. And so I have t-shirts and posters and stickers and a little journal, and various shirts, coach jackets, hoodies, an apron, all types of t-shirts, even a windbreaker and a mug. So I really want to make sure that I cover all the basics here. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, and if you'd love to wear some merch sporting some of my ideas and some of my concepts, there's going to be more to come. But this is just me putting forward 4 different collections up here on the merch store. And definitely get in there sooner rather than later, because there are limited time 10% off your order if you use the codes that you will see above in the video. So I want to thank you all for listening no matter where you're at. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other various locations that we've expanded the podcast onto, I hope you guys really enjoy that, and definitely check out the merch store. Once again, link is in the description down below. The last things I want to talk about are the big movie releases. I think we've had some really great ones this year. I know the Super Mario Brothers movie grossed over $1 billion. I think it's like 1.36 or 37 billion dollars. Whereas Barbie has actually just recently knocked out over $1 billion as well. I had the chance to do a Barbenheimer viewing, and we went and saw Barbie, and Barbie was really great. I think my expectations going in were that Barbie was going to be like this super woke, ultra feminist movie, and just, you know, a real hard thing for maybe a man to sit through. And I think that's actually not what it was. It was definitely a woman movie, but I felt like it really wasn't just pushing some overly feminist agenda. It was just really a movie that, once again, women could own. You know, it was about their toys, their dolls that they grew up with, and you sort of get to experience this as, you know, the Barbies seem to rule their world, and the Kens are there, and the Kens feel kind of unappreciated, and they're just, you know, just trying to get Barbie's attention, that type of thing. They end up coming into the real world, and Ken ends up discovering, you know, patriarchy and stuff like that. He brings it back to Barbie world and turns it into some crazy patriarchy. And they end up all kind of learning a lesson about it, is that we kind of have to work together to create the best world that we can. I think there's a really interesting message behind the film. It's very funny. It's very entertaining. It pays homage to a lot of Barbie lore, a lot of designs and references are in the movie, and Mattel was very tongue-in-cheek in this. And what we're hearing now is that Mattel is essentially, you know, heard that this movie is a good success, and now they think, oh, we want to do a Polly Pocket movie, we want to do a Bratz movie, we want to do a Hot Wheels movie. You know, they're basically thinking the same thing Nintendo and Illumination thought after the Mario Brothers movie. They're like, oh, you want a Zelda movie? You want a Metroid movie? You want a Super Smash Brothers movie? Like, we'll build up and make a MCU out of Mario, you know, a Mario cinematic universe. And now, you know, Mattel is kind of starting to get that same idea. And I don't think that's the point, because what makes Barbie great is that it was a movie about something that's kind of beloved to all of us. There's a lot of nostalgia there, but you also made it a movie about women, and women do not always get to be the spotlight of a movie in the same way. We've definitely had stuff like Tomb Raider, and, you know, we've had women in lead roles, but I mean, this was a movie that was really allowing women to put forth a lot of their issues and a lot of their, you know, just different things. Growing up, having a Barbie, that type of thing, you know, just that whole experience gets extremely personified in this movie. And it's really interesting to see all these characters come to life and see them exist in the real world. It ends up being really funny, but it also ends up being sort of a portrait that us here in reality can look back at ourselves and try to look at this movie and sort of think about what the bigger picture is. After that, we did head over to the IMAX theater, and we saw Oppenheimer, which I think might be one of my favorites of this year. And I was really kind of concerned that Oppenheimer was just going to be a kind of a boring dialogue heavy movie. Even me being a Christopher Nolan fan and really enjoying the cast that they pulled together for this film. It's an incredible star-studded cast, and everyone is firing on all cylinders. But it really helped me put in perspective, just these historical events and sort of what's contextual and what ends up being more subjective, and what we know through history and through secondhand accounts, and being able to separate those between the black and white scenes being what is objective and the color scenes sort of being what are the subjective moments in the film, which are more open to interpretation and perhaps, glamified for entertainment purposes. I think Oppenheimer was actually a really solid movie. It was 3 hours, but the pacing was actually really good. There was just sort of a constant build, and they kept your attention. There was a lot of interesting dialogue, and the movie kept going back and forth in time, and it was a movie that requires your full attention. It's not one of those movies where you be on your phone doing some TikTok or something like that. It's a movie that really requires you to sit there at attention and listen and just enjoy what's happening there. And it has me where I might even pick up Oppenheimer's biography, and just because it really goes full spectrum. It doesn't just cover the bomb and stuff like that. It covers a little bit of the after effects of that. Covers the early bits of his life and how he studied and learned how to build this devastating device. Other movies I just kind of wanted to bounce on was that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I saw that this year. I think it was a really solid movie. I think it was really good. It wraps up the series quite well. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 I thought was absolutely incredible. Tom Cruise has once again killed it. The stunts are incredible. I think this movie really brought in the pacing and the build and the fight scenes and the stunts. It felt really good to be back in the theater watching a movie that wasn't all fake and visual effects and superhero and Fast and Furious, all these fake movies that don't even do the real stunts anymore. It was so refreshing seeing Tom Cruise and seeing the car chases, through Rome, seeing the fight scenes, the running, the jumping, all these various things. It just felt good to see a good old-fashioned spy movie, and it had some treasure hunter movie vibes, and I actually think it's pretty cool that it's a two-part movie here, and you can tell it's a real love letter from Tom Cruise and the cast and the crew on that one. They worked really hard during COVID to get this movie out, and I think it paid off. It's already made $500 million, and I'm sure when it hits streaming, it'll probably make some more. Next is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I absolutely love this movie. My expectations were low and tempered. I said as long as it's better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I'll be quite happy. But they actually ended up sort of referencing events from Crystal Skull, which I think is a good way to sort of place this movie in the franchise and sort of establish that time has marched forward for Indiana, and that, getting old has not been easy for him. Being an archaeologist and a treasure hunter is not something that's really needed in the 1960s. And, the Nazis, that's a thing of the past. It's all about Cold War. It's all about going to space now. And so, this story builds with going to the past and doing this incredible computer-generated animation of Harrison Ford as a young man. They went back into the Lucasfilm archives and just completely generated an entire, maybe 10 or 20 minutes of the opening of the film is entirely done in that way. And it was so compelling, and I was like, this is such an Indiana Jones adventure. It pulled us right back in, and it introduced us to the villain and the Dial of Destiny and what it is, and, just sort of some mystery around it to an extent. And then we get to the modern day and we realize that, his age, his body has kind of caught up to him. The world doesn't really need Indiana Jones anymore, per se. But it turns out he's got one last adventure in him. And I love the way it ties all the characters together and the constant action and suspense. And there's some good stunts in the movie, and there's definitely some CG stuff as well. But I think this movie really captured what's great about Indiana Jones, which, to an extent is a lot of the practical effects. It's the car chases, it's the fun moments, it's the fight scenes, it's, hitting things with the whip and stuff like that. Seeing all those iconic characters and clothing and the score and the time period. I mean, it's a portal to another universe, that takes you back to this. That's what I thought was so special about the 1930s being such a great time period for the earlier films and building up. But it made sense logically to allow time to move forward. And I think the surprises along the way were really great. And it was a heartfelt story, and it really did bring a tear to my eye. It was beautiful, and if that's the last movie in the franchise, then it's a great way to cap it off. But I really did enjoy it, and it was unexpected. I got two more movies I want to talk about. Across the Spider-Verse, I did happen to see as well. This one was really good. I liked Gwen's story. Once again, Miles really has a powerful backstory that he's constantly building, and his family and all these things. And, pulling from the Spider-Verse and having all these different Spider-Men interacting with each other. It was really fun to see all sorts of different ones that popped in. But unfortunately for me, about the last 15-20 minutes, I just fell asleep. I think we had watched Mission Impossible before that, so we were doing a double whammy that day, and I was just tired. But also, I just felt like it dragged, and honestly, the movie was exhausting at a certain point where there were just too many cameos, and it was too much action that you just couldn't pick it all up in one viewing. It's definitely a movie that you watch in multiple viewings, and you watch it when it comes out on Blu-ray or whatever, or streaming services or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden, you'll see little things out of the corner of your eye. You're like, oh, that Spider-Man's in the background, or, oh, this is a reference to blah, blah, blah. And so I just was exhausted, and, I didn't see how it all ended, but it just kind of fizzled out for me, and I just thought it was just such a movie that the pacing was just, at first it was very slow for the first 30 minutes, and I thought that was good because it was building up the story, but then after that it was just nothing but action, and it was draining in that sense. There was just too many of those scenes, and you're just looking back and forth, and you're just trying to catch everything that's on screen, and it just became exhausting. And so I have to say I didn't really enjoy it too much, but I think I'll give it a second chance. I'll watch it again and see how the movie ends. The last one I want to mention is one that I was actually I didn't get to see it in theaters, and I just kind of felt, like, why bother? Does it matter if I watch this? I never felt like there was any sort of urge to see this movie, and that is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This is the second Shazam movie, and actually, crazy thing, I watched it on HBO Max, and I actually think it's really freaking good. The first one was a really good, family film, and I think that sort of continues in this movie. But yeah, I think it's a good action romp. It's a lot of fun. It's got some good cameos. Unfortunately, it ends up being on this tail end of the DC EU that is being cut off, and we don't know if Zachary Levi will have another chance with the cape and being Shazam. But if this is the way to cap it off, it feels like a good way to do so. But I just don't think the movie deserved all the hate it got. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people say. I do think it's weird because where does Shazam fit with the vision of the DCEU? Like, he was not gonna be part of the Justice League, so why were they making these movies? why even were they making the Suicide Squad movies? Because it didn't seem like any of those characters were ever going to, you know, some might and did show up in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it didn't really seem like there was a huge plan for all these characters. It was really just casting a wide net and just making movies about a little bit of everything and just seeing what works and what doesn't. And so this is one of the brighter spots of the DC universe, where it's very lighthearted, it's very fun, it's family friendly, and I think Shazam was good in that way. Black Adam was good in that way. The Flash was good in that way. Whereas, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League and Wonder Woman were kind of, a little bit darker and a little more serious in tone. But I think all of those things fit together really well. And Justice League, sort of brings everyone together and makes it a little brighter moving forward. And had that been allowed to continue, I think it definitely would have led to the hope and optimism that people want to see from the superheroes. But I think we were looking at a modern interpretation based in reality, and I think that was a really good idea, a good way to push things forward. But, that kind of wraps up, all the latest movies I've seen. I still want to go see Haunted Mansion at some point, and I did want to see this Jennifer Lawrence comedy. It's called No Hard Feelings, and it's just kind of like a raunchy, funny little comedy. And, I just feel called to see that one. I think, it's kind of rare nowadays. It's mostly comic book movies and action films that end up showing up in theaters. And so it's very rare that we get like a comedy or even a good comedy or a romantic comedy or any of these sort of things in our culture anymore. So it's a little bit sad, but that's something I want to see. And I am very excited to see Disney's take on the Haunted Mansion ride, and they're once again making another movie about it. So it looks really great, and I'm excited for it. But once again, gamers, I want to thank you all for listening to the Shackcast podcast. Definitely hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Definitely check the links in the description down below. Follow me on TikTok. Hit up the merch store. Check out some of our designs. We have a limited 10% off sale on spring. And check all the other links if you want to follow any of that. I've been taking a lot of time on the channel to work on my photography and my photography blog. I've been doing some writing. I've been focusing on the podcast. We're going to have about 20 clips from the last episode, and we might even pull some from this episode and have some clips out there for everyone to be able to watch. In case you're only able to catch the podcast in bite-size increments, I want to be able to cater to that and potentially grow the audience here that we're able to interact with. If you have any questions or concerns, you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, definitely hit up the YouTube comments and let me know there. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let me know what you think of the podcast and how it can be improved. I certainly appreciate all the feedback. So once again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And we will see you on the next one. Take care. Be safe. Bye.